So thank you all for joining tonight. My name is Mariah Dean. I'm the Master Gardener Coordinator for St. Mary's County.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Patrice Hopkins. And so Mariah is my St. Mary's County Master Gardener Coordinator. And so I'm one of the Master Gardeners. And I'll just quickly just say that, when people hear those titles, just know that, we've gone through the process, starting out as regular gardener, but just had training, and we're just here to be a conduit from the University of Maryland Extension Office to share resources to you. So we're still learning it in our own way. So thank you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Very good point, Patrice. I always tell people, like, it would be so cool if I knew everything about plants. That would be like billions of facts of information. That'd be awesome. It'd be really cool if I did, but I don't. I'm still learning raw stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the spiel on University of Maryland Extension, because you might be like, why is the University of Maryland in St. Mary's County? So the University of Maryland Extension, as well as other extensions across the county, it's just a service from like most state universities that's in most counties in the country. In Maryland, we're in 23 counties, and Baltimore City, an office where we basically bring college level education to you guys, to the residents of the different counties. So this is a University of Maryland Extension presentation. We're going to teach you guys about some horticulture and agriculture stuff, growing vegetables in your backyard in the fall, and how we connect to the University of Maryland. Like, we're all the way down here in the county. We're in the Master Gardener program, which is part of the University of Maryland Extension, which is part of the broader university system by being a part of the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources, which is part of the University of Maryland. For the Master Gardener program, we have a lot of different sub-programs. We have the Ask Master Gardener Plant Clinic, which we are now resuming in person. I am happy to say we're at the Leonardtown Library every other Tuesday from 11 to 1. I have to check again which Tuesdays that is. We have the Grow It, Eat It program, which is this is technically a part of. Okay, so we'll be at the libraries for the plant clinics the 1st and 3rd. Well, actually, it alternates. We're going to be there tomorrow, and then it'll be it's a little bit hard because the weeks get all mixed up and everything, but we'll be there tomorrow, and then every other week following that tomorrow's schedule. So we have plant clinics, and then we have Grow It, Eat It programs, which is where we teach people to grow and then eat their own food, which is, again, like I said, that's part of tonight's. We also have the Wise program, which teaches people how to grow and do landscaping in ways that are friendly to the Chesapeake Bay. We have pollinator programs where we teach people about pollinators. We have composting programs where we teach people about composting. I think there's still a recording up on the library's YouTube page from a composting webinar that we did earlier this year. We also do programming on native plants, which often ties into pollinators since they co-evolved and everything. We have a lot of different resources available. If you can't attend a presentation or a workshop, we're online at the Home and Garden Information Center. There's Ask an Expert, which is just like a question and answer thing where you submit a question and then we'll answer it. There's the Maryland Grows blog that has a lot of the pictures on this presentation are from the blog. They have a lot of good gardening tips that are seasonally appropriate, some really good recipes on there. And then, of course, the local programs like this and other programs that we do. We're planning to be at the county fair, so you can come up and ask us questions there and all over the county at different community events. I'm doing a lot of virtual stuff lately, which has been good. And there's also the Master Gardener Handbook. I do not have near me today, actually, but Patrice might.
I think I was looking back to see on my bookcase. It's a little bit heavy. And I'm not sure. Let's see. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay, so this goes way back though, since my day. 2012 was the first time I took the class. But yeah, it's filled with great information, but our job is to kind of give you bite-sized information. So yeah, but this is a great resource.
Thank you, Patrice. Now I'm going to hand it over to you or pass it.
Okay. All right. So you wouldn't believe that fall really is a great time to vegetable garden. This is the way that you can also extend the season. And so let's say if you love lettuce, etc., we'll talk about that, or even other get some other plants started. Planting in the fall is the best time because that is allows the you to enjoy to harvest cool season crops as well as harvest the last part of your warm season crops. And so we'll be talking about also later on in the presentation about using cold frames, row covers to carry you on through the summer. I'm sorry, not summer, through the fall. Next slide, over to you. Okay, so there are some cool weather crops that thrive in the fall, including arugula, spinach, Swiss chard, so those are leafy greens, broccoli, collards, and collards, I would just say, are probably the staple that a lot of people think of in terms of leafy greens that make it through the frost. In fact, as a matter of fact, usually it's the first of that collards are considered the sweetest, if I'm not mistaken, when it gets this first frost, like in November, well, depending on where we're at, our first frost date, which we'll talk about soon, is November 15th, around that time. So that's actually the best time to actually have those to grow. Snow peas, carrots, and pumpkins. And you can also jumpstart some of these plants indoors for the outdoors. And that's why you see the picture there is actually a tray of some seedlings there where I had broccoli. I tried bok choy, but I have to say that one didn't make it. But there are some other things there where I had lettuce and spinach and kale. And so I'll tell you more on how those survive. And then at the bottom picture there are actually fall flowers, but our main focus are fall vegetables. Next slide. So an alternative option, so let's say you don't want to start, I know we're encouraging you to start a fall garden, but a lot of people are intimidated that once they, especially beginning gardeners, they may start their spring garden and they're like, fall, I don't know, they may think, can I really do this? Or some others will say, I'm taking a break, but what do I do with the open soil? Well, an alternative option is to use a cover crop, which is actually called green manure. Why? If you've ever heard of the cow manure, you ever heard also compost. So those are amendments to the soil. And cover crops is pretty much, let's say you decide to wait to spring, rather than leaving the ground open for other weed seeds to get in there, then you're having to, either till it, or for smaller gardens, just having to pull all that up in the spring is a pain. So rather than having a bare garden, you will plant a cover crop. So what is a cover crop and what's the advantage? Well, that's a strategic way to kind of hold a spot in your garden. And these crops grow like a normal plant, but meanwhile, they're nourish and replenish nutrients that may have been depleted by previous crops. And so not a lot of people think about that, which is another reason you may hear why people rotate crops and why certain crops can be planted in certain areas. Because if you think about it, as a plant is in the ground, you're giving it the nutrients to survive. So it's taking stock on everything going into the plant. And then once you take it out, the nutrients are depleted from the ground. So that's why every season we have to replenish. So an easy way out, I'll just say, if you don't want to start a full-fledged garden, are the cover crops. They prepare the ground, they add organic matter, they minimize open spaces, like I said, from the weeds. Sorry, I kind of ad-lib there. And it's also an excellent option when you can't find any particular manure or compost. And it also lessens soil erosion during the winter. So it keeps everything compact and it doesn't run off, so when there's a lot of rain in the fall, especially in this zone, 7B in St. Mary's County, it could be very rainy. you know, as it gets toward later in the fall. So, but it also improves your soil. So consider it kind of like, you know, it's a nice option to have if you have depending on your garden, if you have a raised garden bed, and you may wonder, hey, where can I buy cover crops? Well, because I've actually gotten my cover crops just online through a catalog. And so some examples, which I have here on the slide, are like winter rye. So that's something that's actually for this season. Buckwheat is something that can turn over like in 30 days, the next, for the summer, or I think it's spring or summertime. And I wish I actually have a bag of winter rye, but it's all right. You'll get the picture. But pretty much, I've included a link there that gives you more information. I encourage you, and then Mariah, she's going to have a list of links for you to review. But I would say check out cover crops. That's something that I haven't had to take the advantage of fully benefiting from, because I kind of rotated mine. But the cover crops are really a good thing to do if you don't want to go full-fledged in the fall. Next slide. Frost dates. So the first step is to calculate your frost dates. And that can go for either season, your spring or your fall. If you don't mind, can anyone in the chat, I'm gonna see if I can do this. Can anyone in the chat mention if it's your first time gardening? But anyways, if it's your first time, or if it's not your first time, usually the first step is to determine your area. So I'm assuming most people are from, oh, hi, Carla. Okay, cool. It's your first time. That's wonderful. Wonderful. So depending on the area that you're from, you can actually go to this link that's provided, thegarden.org/apps or frost dates, to give you an idea on what's a frost date. Well, it's literally the key to knowing the perfect timing to start your garden. In the spring, you're worried on when the last frost is, because frost kills. In general, it kills. So that's not the time to start planting. And in the fall, you are waiting for you calculate from the date of your first frost as well for that same reason. So our here in St. Mary's County, I put the average the last day. I'm sorry, that is actually a typo. And the average first day of frost is November 15th. And so usually you calculate back from those times. So let's say you have a soil, I'm actually picking one, I should have vegetable one, but just to give an example, you may have a seed packet and it will say so many weeks, you know, plant, or you can start indoors so many weeks before the last plant date or etc. Well, you just pretty much just get a handy dandy, you know, calendar and just kind of mark on when you plan to plant those vegetables. And it's important to know your hardiness zone, because the reason is that if you notice, just in general, if you go to the grocery store, and you may notice certain fruits are not doing well at this time of the year. It's because it's not their season. Strawberries, kind of look piss poor, even lemons, you know, just certain things are for certain seasons and they flourish. Well, that's because they're coming from a truck or being transported from other places that have a longer season. And so that's why it's super important to know that, you know, anything that, we know that we can't grow lemons all year long here in Maryland, right? And so that's the importance of knowing the frost dates. So just want to foot stomp that, because a lot of people bypass, oh, you know, frost date, they kind of see, oh, it's time to plant. I want to plant like everybody else, you know? So, but this is super important to know. So anyways, two things to put on, that's on the slide here. The likelihood of frost will vary between landscapes. It may change due to wind, elevation, proximity, buildings, and water. And the surest way to know really is to monitor the weather. So for example, I completely had to watch the frost dates because here in this region, it's warmer. Sometimes it was oddly normal all the way into like late October, you know, and so some of your plants, if you start planting them now, they might flourish as if like, hey, you know, it's this is my time, but we'll show you and share with you later in the presentation on how you can actually protect those plants when it's not really their time to grow. Next slide. Okay. I believe it's over to you, Mariah. This part. Oh, actually, I'm mistaken. Sorry. Excuse me for just a second. I misplaced my phone up here. Here you go. No, I'll keep going. So anyways, so picking your plants. So what this is a visual planting calendar. It takes the guesswork on when you should start. Now, this is based on Central Maryland, and we do have one that is a little more closer to St. Mary's County, but the link is provided there. But this gives you an idea of how long the growing season is. For example, the range of dates, like the orange. The orange is for planting seeds for warm weather crops. Okay, now the blue, the light blue, is for planting seeds for cold hardy crops, either direct, and that's directly in the ground. So the key is at the very top with the color codes. Some plants do better as transplants. So without getting too detailed, not only do you need to know your frost date, but then you also need to know which ones you can get started indoors or have to be directly seeded. So an example of a plant that needs to be directly into the ground starting off are beets. So that's an example. And even though I do see that carrots has a blue, I actually did something a little unique last October. Carrots, I did jumpstart it a little bit. I jumpstarted the plant just to see what it'll do, and I actually did harvest carrots. It was maybe, I'm gonna say May, probably June. It was early June. So but this is a pretty accurate key. So you just take a look at, maybe it looked like a lot of information, but this gives you a visual. So it takes the guesswork on figuring out the number of days. Next slide.
And I don't mean to add extra stuff, but I will also mention this one's for Central Maryland. So we're about a week or two behind usually. So
yeah.
It says that, it ends end of July, but since we're a little further south, we can normally, a lot of these we can bring into mid-August.
That's right.
Yeah. Feel free to add anything to the other slide.
Oh no, that's fine, right. Actually, I was thinking about it's a marked up, I think it's upstairs. This is my little area that I keep here with resources. But I was going to show the one that I actually have for sort of closer to St. Mary's County. But we'll make sure to, send that to the folks, for after the presentation. All right, picking a date. So you determine the time of maturity, though this was all be on your seed packet. And I could definitely say your seed packets are not created equal. I've gotten frustrated by certain seed packets. I'm like, when, for goodness sake, is this supposed to harvest? So, but the key things to look out for, seriously, some packets are good, like even in Lowe's, they'll have, it'll say if it's a plant or flower, rather, it'll say if it's an annual or perennial. It'll say the same thing for some vegetables too. But yeah, if you see the seed packet, you'll see in this case it's high mowing organic seeds. And it'll say determine the maturity date. Well, it'll say underneath, you see the name, this is Kale, okay, and there's 50 seeds, and there's a number of days, it says 55 days. And so a lot of times you will, at least what's been handy to me, I just might as well just pick it up here. What's been handy to me this year, my scribble scrabble really, it's been just getting a big calendar, just like monthly calendar. I did a mistake of doing like the monthly, weekly, and daily. I was putting too many details in there, but this gave me a picture of, I would decide, okay, after looking at, for example, that central, even though it's Central Maryland, to kind of gauge, okay, deciding what I'm going to plant and when. That calendar will help you to, that bar graph, that chart that you just saw will help you pick, okay, this is what I can plant, and once you decide when you plan to either start it indoors or outdoors, that's when you count from that point the number of days that that plant will harvest. So you mark your calendars, add labels, especially starting indoors, because you'll forget, just guaranteed. Next slide. Okay, so I'm gonna hand this over to Mariah. She's gonna tell you about how to do a soil test.
Yep, so soil tests are really simple. You just go out, dig a couple spots, 10 to 12, you put it in a bucket, swirl it all around, mix it up, put it in a bag, and then send it off. That's like the basic outline. There's a really good video that I highly recommend you watching that goes into more details about how specifically far down deep you need to go to get an accurate soil sample and all those sorts of things on this link. I took a screenshot of the paused image of the video on that website. But doing a soil test is one of the most important things you can do to get a garden growing, where you work the ground up. So you got to make sure the ground is good, that the garden is growing on. We have some soil testing kits in our office in Leonardtown. If you stop by, our office is still a little COVID-y. We don't have COVID, but we're still operating under some COVID restrictions. But if you call or email ahead of time, we can easily get you a soil testing kit so that you can know what you're working with. And then once you get the results, we can help you read them and understand what things you need to do to make healthy soil, and especially depending on which plant you want to grow as well, because different plants have different nutrient needs. Let's see. Over to the next slide. And this is back to Patrice.
Okay. Yes. And actually, I saw a comment there. I have to be honest with you. I haven't used the short day factor, but there was a comment, Mariah, that wants to just stop real quick. That was on the slide that it looks like I kind of glossed over a little bit. The short day factor and figuring out the timing. Yes. They add 10 to 14 days of short day factor. And I think that's just accounting for the fact that there's going to be shorter days or daytime or length in terms of the sun, because you do lose that as you get later in the season. And so that means it's just going to take longer to actually start or grow. And so do you have anything more to add to that, Mariah, on the 10 to 14 day short day factor for those, I guess, that's directly seeded?
You're good.
Oh, good. Look. But yeah, if anybody has any questions any further than that, just let us know. We'll definitely help you out there. Okay. I'll let you get back to the other slide. 2 slides for me, I think. Yeah. Okay. So planting your plants. So the key things are, of course, sunlight. Okay. Or light requirements. You have to pick your ideal spots for the plants. And you may not always know that, especially if you're first-time gardener, you may not know, okay, what grows where a lot of the times, one clue can also be on the soil package. Usually it'll say it requires full sun, but I'm gonna tell you a general rule. A general rule is any plant, particularly if you're starting outdoors, I'm gonna talk the outdoors first. You have to pick a spot that provides at least 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. That's a general rule across the board, especially for vegetables. Now, some plants that grow that we've talked to or actually commented as examples of what grows best in the fall. Well, the reason why they do is because they can handle a little bit lesser of the sunlight of a shorter season to grow. But it's very important, if you haven't already, now's the time to look out in your yard to see where is there sunlight. And I'll say there's 3 times in the day you probably should do it. It's in the morning. I'll say, let's say at 9 o'clock, and 12 in the middle of the day, and then maybe 3 o'clock. And that kind of gauges like how much sun you'll get. And I would say compare. I actually did that. Compare how much sun. I can definitely say that it was very super important. I'm actually going to take this over a little bit. I hadn't intended to do this, but just to give you an example, I'm a visual person. And so I'll just show you real quick. So I live in a townhome, this was supposed to be the intermediate spot before we sold our home before COVID. And so we kind of got, I don't want to say stuck here, but this is excuse me. Yeah, so anyways, it was very important because I don't know if you can see very well, but this is the patio, and depending on, can you see okay? Can you see that okay, Mariah?
Yeah, we kind of see the top of it.
The top, can you see it better now?
Yeah, we see, yeah, it's better now. Maybe a little bit more down.
Oh, down. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, now we see pretty well. Yeah.
Let me do this. Real quick. I don't want to take away from the class.
No, this is great.
So this, I'm just keep the door closed because it's raining now. But anyways, just to give you an example, you see where there's a little bit of shadow up there. I didn't realize I don't get the most sun like right here. I had to determine what days and how to place my plants that required the most sun, out of the way of the shade up here, so that's a prime example. Now I'm working with containers, but you can do that for any of your gardens to determine where the sun is. It's super important to do that in order for your plants to grow. And another way in terms of the light requirements, well, let's say you have a shady spot, but you want to get your fall garden started. Well, just to show you an example, this is, I don't have it, just excuse it for just a minute. I actually haven't started mine yet, okay, for my fall garden, but this is a grow light. Mine's, you don't have to have a big fancy one, but this is something I got just over the years. I started to learn, so I'm going to say I don't have it plugged in just yet, but I have it on a timer. You can use a grow light indoors to jumpstart your seeds, and then before you plant them outdoors. And so you can make reference to that chart that we just showed you on which ones can be started indoors. And so the light requirements help to at least get the sprout going. And then you can plant it out maybe like 3 weeks later. Okay, so anyways, it's also important to keep plants early. So I know the water requirements is a little bit tricky. So planting now, because it's still hot, it's important to keep your seedlings watered until they get established. Then later on in the season, however, a lesson learned from me is you definitely have to make sure you actually have the right potting soil, because it seemed like it was always raining. And so the disadvantage a little bit in the fall you have to watch out for that plants can suffer from is a little bit wet feet. So if it's too damp, it can also alter how a plant grows, particularly flowers, like if you're doing a fall cool season flowers. But anyways, so I just said that, hey, check the first 3 inches of your soil before watering. And you'll like this, okay? Advantage, I say disadvantage versus the, oh yes, absolutely, Margaret. That's a lesson learned for me. I went through 2 different soils. See, even me, it doesn't matter, master gardener or not, we have to, go through trial and error. And the soil, that potting mix was the key. I started off using leaf grow, which was horrible for containers. It's great to use, but don't use it in your containers because it's too heavy and there's not enough drainage. Then I used another potting mix from a nursery, and that was still heavy. But when I used just gardening, just a potting soil, it makes sense now, right? Potting soil for a pot. Well, I wasn't thinking that, but that was the key. So you're going to very, very important to have drainage actually. So you're going to be doing both. So in the warmer part of the season, in the fall per se, depending on where you are here, it doesn't really start getting a little chilly until maybe later October into November. And then you actually don't have to water as much. So that's a good part. Okay, so anyways, I'll just say next slide. I think I'm talking too much, Mariah.
You're good. I was just answering a question in the chat about
oh, thank you.
Potting mixes, because we're technically not supposed to recommend brands, but like Patrice said, anything that says potting mix is usually good. And what I do when I go to stores, and I'm that weird lady that will just feel the soil like through the bag. Like I'll be like, how heavy is this? And I'll pick it up and I'll like squish it to see. And if it's real light and fluffy, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I want. That'll drain real well. Not anything with like perlite, which is like those little white Specs or vermiculite, which is a little bit thicker. Those really help with drainage, and they'll help lighten the soil so it's more porous, so that water
exactly.
Yep,
I've done that too. Yes, absolutely. The potty mix is definitely key. Some people say, oh, what's the difference? It really is a difference. I didn't even take it seriously. Okay, I learned the lesson because I worked in containers. I'm sorry, mine is 100% containers, upstairs and down here, and that's a big lesson. And so the mixes I thought that worked well, Margaret, it really was like I said, like she said, I can't recommend a name brand per se, but it was anything that's a potty mix. I've also done separately from that, the DIY mixing in the perlite, vermiculite, and the spangle moss. Did I say it right? Yep. I mixed those together, and that created another soil. But I just, if you want to do it fast, you don't have to worry about all of that, then you would do the potty mix. Let's see. Yep, so she already touched on that. Linda mentioned, when you say containers, does that include boxes? Yes. So let me show you again. Now, mine is a box shape. I believe I know what you're saying, because when people think pots, they think about the round ones. And I'm gonna show you, I actually have a variation. So let's try this again. Oops. Uh-oh. Stay with me. I'm gonna click on Zoom. Here we go. I'm back. Sorry. Okay. So I got a mix of them, and you can basically apply the same thing to all types of pots. So let me see if I can get here closer. I'm gonna do a little bit of the version. Okay, so you get to see my garden a little bit. Let's see. The camera's here. I hope you can see. So I have fabric containers and the regular, regular round pots. And look, this is what happens when you don't have drainage, okay? And then I have the square. So at least when I say containers, I'm really talking about all of, or here, so I guess it just depends. I would like to ask what containers. Linda, what container do you have? What type of containers do you have? I hope that answered your question. So, let me get back to the presentation here. Yeah, because raised garden beds also needs drainage as well. But raised garden beds can take the garden soil that you see. They take a heavier soil. They still need drainage as well. But for your pots, they need to be lighter. And that could be any size, any container, whether it's a box shape, round shaped pots. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's still all is the same. Yeah, potty mix for growing. So I see what you said, Mariah. Okay. 3x8x4. Okay, so those are the raised garden beds. Those are the raised beds, Linda. The ones that are on top of the ground. Okay. Oh yeah. So I've actually mixed in too. So in a raised garden beds, just essentially raised garden beds typically, because they are up from the ground, they kind of create their own, by having a raised garden bed, it's already above the ground, so you kind of can have a little more flexibility with the type of soil you use in it. You can put like I said, heavier soils in that. I will only use potty mix just for pots or containers. For raised garden beds, you're okay to use any bags that may say garden soil and mix in compost, and that will give the drainage, because it still needs drainage even in the raised garden beds. But the reason why is because of what you actually, example what I showed you was my pot is like I won't even tell you what that was supposed to be. Okay, it's a dahlia. Yeah, it just died. It's just, yeah. So you have some wins and losses. But anyway, yeah. Okay. So I'll press on. Next slide.
Yep. I always tell people you can expect to lose at least 10% of your plants. So
yeah.
I think this one is switch over to me.
Yeah, over to you, Mariah. Thank you. Sorry for the diversion.
No, it was great. It was very educational. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so covering some leafy greens. I didn't cover everything on these bullets, like endive. I covered some plants in the mustard family. I did not cover collard greens or broccoli rab. Hopefully next time we'll get those ones. But leafy greens are a great fall crop. They're easy to grow. They're delicious. They're less likely to bolt in cool weather, and some are actually sweeter in cool weather. Like arugula, it can be sweeter in cold weather. When you grow arugula in the summer, it actually takes on a spicier flavor. I can't recall the exact chemistry behind it that causes that, but a lot of leafy greens taste really good in the winter, real sweet. Like Patrice said about collards, once they get that frost, they turn a little bit sweeter. And they also do really well in part sun. So the way that the earth revolves around the sun, we start losing, our days are getting shorter and everything. So we have a little less sunlight. And leafy greens will do really well in part sun. They actually a lot of times can kind of fry in full sun, not all the time, but
that's true.
They do really well in part sun. So these are a really good option to grow in fall. Like I said, arugula is a really good one. It's still zesty in the cooler weather, but it's not as spicy as it is in the summer. It's delicious. You can grow this in containers very easily as well. It doesn't get too big, maybe 2 foot max, and that's usually once it gets some flower heads on it. Another thing about growing leafy greens in the fall, which is a bullet point here, is they're less likely to bolt. In the summer, arugula will just bolt and it'll get these really pretty low flowers.
So fast.
Yeah. But when leafy greens bolt and get the flowers, they get more bitter tasting. They get like bitter. They're not as good. But in the cooler season, they're real tender and delicious. So it's a great time of year to grow arugula. Kale is another really good leafy green to grow in the fall. And again, with everything here, like I'm saying kale is great, but there are so many different varieties of kale.
Yeah.
So definitely check the back of the seed packet. Pictured bottom left is like a Lacinto kale, which is really good. That's pretty cold hardy. And then some curly purple kale, that's really good. Some kale will actually survive if it even gets a little bit of snow on it. I've grown it and I've just washed the snow off it and picked a little bit, and it's been fine. These are also really easy. Most leafy greens are easy to grow in containers. And again, it's less likely to bolt in the fall. Swiss chard is one of my absolute favorites. I've done this before with a group of master gardeners at Anne Marie Children's Garden in Calvert County. And the kids love it. Their stems are so colorful. They're like, what is this? A lot of people think it's rhubarb when they first see it, but it is not. And unlike rhubarb, the stems and the leaves are edible. They're really good when they're like young and tender. Like that's when they're really good in salads. When they get a little bit larger, like pictured below, they're really good if you saute them with maybe a little garlic and ginger maybe. They're actually biennials, but since our frost will oftentimes kill them, they're usually treated more as an annual. But in order to produce the seed heads, they need to grow for 2 years. And similar to beets, each seed is actually like a seed pod. It's not just one plant in there. There's several embryos in there, which I think is really cool. But with that information, that also means that we have to make sure that we thin them when the plants are about 2 inches tall, because they cannot all grow in that same tiny area. But I love Swiss chard. I love growing it. They're really easy to harvest. You just go out and harvest like 6, or if you have a bunch like that has like a dozen or more leaves, you just go out and harvest the outer leaves and you cut it 2 inches, and then they'll grow back throughout the season. And Swiss chard is a powerhouse of a nutritious plant. I put this over here. You can see they have so many nutrients. Like, I don't know how many times that is of our, oh wait, it says 1,000% of our daily vitamin D. So they're really good. That's almost so much you might want to eat it in like a little bit of moderation. They're really high in magnesium, which can be really hard to find outside of meats. They're also really manganese, potassium, iron. They're just nutritional powerhouses, and they are delicious and great for us. I highly recommend growing those. It's a little bit late to plant Swiss chard though, sorry guys. Also lettuces, and a lot of these leafy greens also do really well in the spring as well. Anytime that it's cool, a lot of these plants will do well, so spring or fall. But lettuces are really great. You can grow romaine lettuce. When you grow romaine lettuce, usually you can kind of harvest the outer leaves, but a lot of times people just cut the whole head off and they harvest it like that. Leaf lettuce though, which is pictured on the right side, it's just like Swiss chard. You can harvest like the outside leaves and then it'll grow back. And those are really easy to grow in containers. I've grown them in containers before, like a container that was maybe like 2 or 3 foot across, no more than a foot deep. And I just filled it with leaf lettuce, and I'd keep, go out and have a salad at least once a week. And even in just that little container, I was able to have a salad at least once or twice a week. And I probably should have been eating more salads because I had so many in that little container. But yeah, they're really good in the fall. Spinach is another really good plant to grow in the fall. Similar growth habits to arugula. It doesn't get as tall, as cold. Like a lot of these plants like kale, spinach, they can survive the winters. Like I said, I've gone out and brushed snow off my kale and it's been fine, but they won't grow as well. They'll survive, but they won't grow as well. So that's one thing to know. And again, these are really easy to grow in containers, and they are, again, everybody knows about how good spinach is for you because we Popeye with his strong. They're really high in iron. They're really easy to grow. There's a lot of different varieties. Just follow the back of the packet for those. Another type of plant that's one of my favorites to grow in the fall and spring are root crops. They're really great for fall. And many of them also double as greens, like beets, carrots, radishes. Beet greens are great for you. Fish greens and turnip greens I found can have like some like fuzzy stuff on the stem, which I don't really like. Those I normally cook them because cooking them down gets rid of that fuzzy stuff. But they're all really good for you. Just make sure to wash them really well. And these can overwinter really easily. I really like carrots in the fall. I think they just are a little bit sweeter. And some people will leave turnips in the ground all winter and then harvest in the spring. And there's a couple other plants you can do that with. The beets are really great to grow. You can plant them when the soil temperature is between 45 and 85 degrees. I would plant them a little bit sooner than, I wouldn't wait and be like, oh, it's 45 degrees, I'm planting it now, because once it's 45 degrees in the fall, it's going to keep going down. So try to plant it in that range though. And there's so many varieties to choose from. Like you got the reds, the purples, the goldens, the whites, the stripes, so many different types. There's rainbows, they're awesome. And the greens are really, really good for you. Like I said, whenever I buy root vegetables, I often look for the ones with the best greens. So I'm like, that's 2 for 1. But growing them also is good. Then you get to grow more. Carrots are great. They're tasty. Like I said, they're tender. My favorite variety to grow is Scarlet Nantes because a lot of times it's in containers, and the Scarlet Nantes are they don't get very big. They stay pretty small. And a lot of times when you go to the store, you see like baby carrots. Those are usually like big carrots that have been like peeled and sliced. But Scarlet Nantes stay that like baby sweet size. I don't know which carrot has the sweetest greens. I'll have to figure that out. I've used the greens before as like a parsley replacement. I think they're a little bit more bitter, but they're pretty good in soups and some other stuff. And you can play around with different ways to cook carrot greens. Um, Scarlet Nantes, and there are a lot of other varieties of carrots that will grow really easily. Like these baby carrots grow so easily in containers. It's awesome. Like if you get like a long window box, that's what I've grown mine in before, and they do awesome. And like I said, you can keep growing these through the winter if you just mulch them really well or put some straw on them, and they'll stay, they'll just stay in the ground. They'll be fine. And then radishes are also really good, and these are really quick to grow. They're quick and easy. I really like growing them in cooler weather because, like arugula, radish can be a little bit spicy in the summer. And they also like bust more in the summer. So one way you know a radish is ready is when you go out and you can see it, the top of it like pushing up through the ground. But if you wait too long and it keeps pushing, it'll bust. And a busted radish, like the dirt gets all in the crack and everything, and it's not that good. But they're really quick to harvest. I think one of the quickest to harvest ones is like 45 days. But check the back of the packet, of course. They can also be used as a cover crop because they add aeration to the soil and some nutrients. And again, their greens are edible, but I usually cook those because they got that fuzzy stuff. And just like beets, they come in all different colors and sizes. There's like watermelon radishes, and I think there's black radishes. There's of course the classic like red skin with the white. They're making cylindrical ones, all sorts of ones. There's also turnips to grow in the fall, of course. I like turnips. One of my favorite types. I can never say it right. It begins with an H. It's about as small as these ones on the left, and they might actually be the type. I think it's like Hakuri. I'd have to look it up. But they're really sweet. I really like those particular ones raw because they're literally so sweet. I will just like eat them like an apple.
Oh, wow.
On salads. Their skin can be a little bit tough, but they're so good. And then other people will do turnips, like make like mashed potatoes out of them, sort of thing. It's just mashed turnips with like butter, salt, pepper. They're really easy to grow. Usually they take a little bit longer than radish, but they don't take too long. And they'll do the same thing as radish. They bust. You can see on the right hand side, this is a turnip that around so long, and you can look at it, there's like all these cracks in there, there's all that dirt, and it's like, who would want to eat that? So I guess whoever grew this just realized that this poor turnip just forever, and they made like a turnip lantern for a fall decoration. It's creative and cute. I mean, what else do you do with it? Because if it stays in the ground too long and everything, won't be good. So
that's creative.
Yeah. So it's now I'm gonna pass it to Patrice.
Thank you. And Mariah, I did answer a question. So I think it was Margaret. I apologize. I answered so quickly. I think it was Margaret. Where to buy seeds from the fall, and so typically you can get them from seed catalogs. But I give examples, so we can't market the names of these companies, but just giving examples if you wanted to Google. But those are places that I've used before, like Southern Exposure. Make sure I put that in there right. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange is a place in Mineral, Virginia, for example, or another example is Part Seed in South Carolina, but that's a catalog. I would definitely say, check out seed catalogs. That's the best thing you can do, because you wouldn't believe, just as Mariah showed the varieties of beets, I never knew of these different vegetables that came in an array of colors, and they're organic. A lot of them are organic. So like, it's a real thing. You just may not see it. And some things you may not, it may be, and hopefully after this presentation, because you'll be enlightened about like the Swiss chard, you may go in the grocery store and say, oh, I never paid Swiss chard any attention It's right there, you know, so I'll say give it a try. So so good job on that part of the presentation, Mariah. And I have to say too, if you want to extend the season on all the leafy greens that she was just talking about, is to I just thought about it, succession planting. So maybe 1 week you plant your lettuce, and then you wait 2 weeks and maybe start some seeds for lettuce again. And then that way, that's how these farmers do it. They do succession planting, meaning that they do it, they you know, plant successively and plant every two weeks, so they can keep having that same supply over and over. Otherwise, you feel like, you know, and it will grow back if you just did it, plant it one time. It will grow back, but you may have patience to wait for it to grow back. So, but with snow peas I have here, that's something I actually tried for the first time over the winter. I didn't know if it would survive. And I'll just say with fall gardeners can be a little more, I'll say, you should have to trust the process. Yes, the presentation will be available, Carla. You have to trust the process with fall gardens. Trust that it will survive, because they're made to survive these temperatures. Yes, absolutely, Carla. And so a snow pea, however, is a tender crop. So you will have to cover it once it really falls below freezing, and it will flourish. Oh my goodness. These snow peas, they were the first to really, I mean, I almost couldn't keep up. And they're in that little container you see. The left picture is when it was snowing. And I actually, you know, I hadn't watered it for a while, because you don't want to overwater these things, because they either could freeze or, you know, but they can take it too. So you see a row cover, if you're wondering what that white sheet is, that's a row cover. And I just threw, just like Mariah said, she dust off the snow off her kale. I was like dumping snow in areas that were dry. So I wouldn't have to go, and because I didn't really have a water hose or drip irrigation yet upstairs. But they took off in March. So even though you say, you may not see them grow as fast during the winter, I'll say that too. Don't expect it to grow super fast unless you started earlier, like kind of now, you know, but even still, it may slow a little bit. But let March hit. You'll be the first one to say, I have peas. Well, usually everyone says, oh, I gotta wait until it warms up. No, you would have started in advance. So that's the advantage of fall. So anyways, yeah, so it's the gift that keeps on giving in a good way. Next slide. Oh, you need stakes for snow peas. Next slide. Also beans. You can you have to plant your last set of snap beans kind of now, you know, so those aren't like snow peas. Snow peas are the best, you know, in the colder season, whereas snap beans are more they're more of a, I'll say, a tender bean too, but you can't, but they actually grow best now. I'm sorry, early in the season. But if you want to plant snap beans again, well, they'll probably do okay, but definitely not before the frost, right, Mariah? And there's many vegetables to pick from. There's a bush bean that's a little more lush, but just the thing to be prepared for with all beans is to have some type of stake. And you can just get that kind of, you can basically use anything. You can use this, but you can use netting, but you'll have to have something to tie it or secure the beans. That some of them will, of course, will have, like snow peas, they have tendrils that will actually climb on their own. But I actually, for example, got my stake, you know, I don't want to see if I want to say this like I'm still marketing, but you can at any hardware store. And you know, you just pick the stake and secure it with I was looking back with actually this is an example. Just any kind of stake, and then you can secure with burlap string or something. But anyways, they do the bush bean does best in containers. Okay, next slide. Okay, Brassica. So this is the family that includes like your cabbage, your cauliflower, and then is that actually I'm a little stumped. Is that rutabaga? Rutabaga? Did I say that right? I'm looking at that picture again, Mariah. I'm having a brain freeze.
I don't know. I just pulled it on the website. I also think
you know what?
Which is not in the Brassica family. It's in the Amaryllis family. But I was just like, it's got cauliflower, cabbage, and broccoli. I'm gonna stick it on there.
Yeah, and broccoli. Yeah.
I'm not sure what the middle one is.
Yes, Margaret. Yes. I was like, K. Yes, kohlrabi. I've actually never eaten it, but you're right. How dare I say rutabaga? Because that's like, it's brown. So I was totally off. See, not everybody knows everything.
Exactly. That's why we have the community. And
Thank you, Margaret. Yes. So these
Margaret
can be planted.
Gardener, she isn't already. Sorry.
I know, Margaret, you want to join? So many of these can be planted as transplants this time of the year. So if you don't know what transplant is, they're new to gardening. It's just pretty much means that they grow best indoors. You start off. Oh, thank you, Carla. You're welcome. Good luck to you. And so pretty much these are also known as cruciferous vegetables, and primarily because of their flower. I think from what we just learned, the flower, when they flower. Yes. So it's a great. What'd you say, Mariah?
I said, sorry, I put leaves, but it's flower petals.
Yes, the flower petals. Yeah. So it's a great fall crop. Next slide. And please let me know. I apologize. I should have been mindful of the time. I rambled a little bit here, but let me know if we need to skip a few slides.
We can probably maybe just breeze through a couple of these.
Yeah.
Don't spend too much time because it is already 7.
Okay.
So let's do the next one.
All okay. Right. Okay. We also have broccoli. Next slide. That's a great plant too, and those do well. Cabbage as well. You gotta make sure you have enough space for cabbage. They can withstand some really chilly temperatures. Next slide.
Cauliflower you're really challenging to grow here. So.
Oh yeah.
Her advice. It just it's gonna be a challenge.
I tried cauliflower. It didn't work out as well for me, but broccoli did well. My God.
Yeah.
So next slide. Later season crops. So we threw in some others like garlic, shallots, rhubarb. So when you see the presentation, you might see it a little bit better. That just shows the what you see in that picture is an experiment that I did. I grew garlic on the counter of my, just the kitchen counter. You can grow just a plastic cup. Put a little bit of water in there. I took a organic garlic artichoke. Let's see, that's that right? Yeah, the brand name. I can't tell you the brand. But there was a particular health food store that I got because I couldn't find garlic even on the through the plant catalogs. I could not find garlic. They were like sold out everywhere. So I said, you know what? This is one time I'm actually going to see if I can grow garlic from the grocery store. So that's an experiment. It grew and sprouted within 9 days, and I planted it, so it worked out. Next slide. This is just an extra bonus one. You can read it another time, but there are some cool flowers. I gave some examples of flowers that you can actually start in the fall. And as long as you're patient and know that they will grow and you cover them with row cover after freezing temperatures, you'd be surprised. These grew so well for me. Next slide. And then harvesting. So, now is still the time to harvest your last warm season crops if you've already still have your spring crops. Except for sweet potatoes, you have to leave those in the ground for a little bit more time. I'm actually growing those in the bag this year, so we'll see how that goes. But anyways, how you harvest. Once you harvest, you do have to store certain vegetables a certain way. Canning, you can can certain things. The picture there though is green onion, so it's really kind of best to kind of just go ahead and just use it as you go along. I haven't stored that before. I've just kind of been using it in my dishes that I cook. So next slide. I think let's see, this over to you, Mariah, if you want to talk about that briefly.
Yeah, so of course, one way, fall gardening, the crops will grow outside without any protection. But if you want to extend the season, you can add a little protection and keep them around a little bit longer. Like I said, you can brush the snow off of some things, but if you put a row cover over your kale, you won't need to brush the snow off of it because the row cover will keep it off. So there's a couple different like basic season extending tools, like row covers. Patrice will talk about burlap. There's cold and greenhouses, and to continue harvesting longer. So row covers are really cheap and easy to make. You can use different types of fabric. You can get them at the big box store. You can order some offline. They can be used in warmer months as well as like a bird netting or to prevent insect damage. And you can kind of, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can just kind of float them on top of the plants. Like you literally just kind of like lay it on top of them. And then you can put like rocks or something around the edges to hold it in place. You want to be like a little bit loose on the plants. Like you don't want to just like crush the plants with it. So it's putting them on top of the floating row cover. And then you can also create a structure, like they sell like hoops and stuff you can use. They'll sell like pre-made kits that sell like the hoops and the fabric and everything. And those are a good way to keep the fabric off of your plants. Tracy's going to talk about her experiences using burlap.
yes. So yeah, this is a picture of you see a little bit of a mixture of the burlap. I actually used burlap to cover some existing pots, like my mom's strawberries that she sent from North Carolina. I just knew like, okay, they're a goner. But burlap just insulates, and so it still will get cold, but insulates. And another way you'll see in the middle picture, that's a greenhouse, a mini greenhouse. And that's another way too to let's see, it was just the strawberries I have on that second. But also just real quick, you can use burlap. I feel, hopefully I'm not breaking some rules here, Mariah, but I'm just giving examples. I'm not marketing. I'm just giving you some examples where you can easily find burlap, Tractor Supply, easy. And you can cover your seedlings outdoors. So if you decide to direct seed, these make excellent insulation to like cover, especially even now. It kind of speeds up the germination. But the only thing is to watch out for. Oh, cool. Well, that is true. You can go to a fabric store too. But the only thing to watch out for, I warn, is just make sure that once they're growing, just keep a watch, because otherwise they'll grow through here. They grow through here, and you may accidentally pull a seedling when you lift it and you check on it, and you're like, "Oh no, I just pulled up a seedling." You can plant it back, but still, you don't want to do that. Yeah. So burlap is another way, and to the right is kale. That put burlap. I was kind of testing it out because I was going to try a row cover. I used hoops at first. I did the floating thing, but it was starting to get so windy, so I just took some clothespins to kind of put them on the row. Yes, thank you. Is that Sadai? Is that how you pronounce your name? I'm sorry. Hope I didn't butcher it. Thank you for joining us. Okay, next slide.
Another way you can do it is a little more permanent structure, is called a cold frame. So pictured left is Chesapeake natives, and they have these. This was part of the mansion there. Some rich person had their own really nice greenhouse and all these cold frames. I think there's 6 total. I can't remember exactly how long they are. You can see all that a cold frame really is. This is a really nice one. This is more meant to be permanent. And I say this was a rich person who designed this and made this and made this. But I don't know how much this exactly would cost, but it's just some sort of vertical structure. It's at a slope. There's these little wooden pieces here, and it's usually dug in the ground a little bit. And at Chesapeake Natives, we put like wood chips in the bottom, and you can use straw, or some people just leave it as dirt. And this is a really good way to overwinter plants. Like they put a lot of their perennials in there, and then what they do in the winter is they put these, I didn't put any pictures of them, but they basically cover the tops. And you can see on this picture here, this is just a raised garden bed. And normally there would be like a little bit of a slope so that the cover wouldn't be laying directly on the plants. But some people will just do it that way and they'll cover the plants. They'll be fine. You can use clear. That's really good to use in the winter. In the summertime, if you're growing something like leafy greens, what we do at Chesapeake Natives is we have these covers like this, but instead of it being clear, we use shade cloth. And if we have something that is a shade plant or is susceptible to like sunburn basically or sun scalding, putting that shade cover over them will help them. So it's just a way to insulate things. Kind of, some people refer to it as almost like an in the ground greenhouse, but it's not as helpful as a greenhouse. It's just something. And they can be as intricate or as simple as you want. So I'm gonna.
Yes. And Mariah and Linda, she mentioned that her dad made one with an old window with a hinge so it can lift easier. So that's pretty cool. Yes, we've heard a lot of great success. And sometimes you can buy like mini greenhouses. Depending on what space you have a small space, they do sell mini greenhouses. And then you have like a also you can do permanent or semi-permanent, and like the one to your right. The one to the left is mine, my small space. The one to the right is pretty nice. Is that yours, Mariah?
No, I don't have a deck. I wish.
But those are just examples. Yes, next slide, Mariah. And there's other ways, like other people get creative. As you can see to the left, there are like some water containers. You can use what's called cloches. I mean, as long as they have some type of air to them, but yeah, you can use plastic bags, but just be careful of plastic bags, I would say. Because then if it's not too much aeration, you can like encourage mold and depending on if you're in the woodland area, you might get some pets. So just be careful, but hopefully there are a lot of ways that you can reduce and reuse certain things and recycle. Okay, next slide. So as a reminder, actually, I didn't mention this before. I meant to mention first of all that in the fall, it's important to clean up your garden if you have a pre-existing garden. You know, maybe you already have one that you started in the spring, you know, going into now in the summer. But cleaning up, you got to rotate certain vegetables because some plants cannot be planted after others. You know, empty your drip line irrigation. That's something I had to remind my stepfather and my mom before the last frost. Unfortunately, they took the whole thing up, but that's not what I meant. I just said empty the lines anyways. But don't forget to bring your house plants in. You know, for example, you know, if you have or even plants like lemons, like I've heard people have brought it in and put it in like a sunnier spot actually in their homes. Some plants are tropical plants. They do not do well. I've lost many of them below 50 degrees. Just know that some of your plants you might have to bring indoors. Weed through the season. There are perennial weeds that creep up, like they're getting ready for the next season too. And so it's best to try to just keep even throughout the season. If you see weeds, go ahead and chop them up or go ahead and get rid of them, and then you're lessening your workload later. And you know, use the fall, winter. Let's say if you don't decide to do a garden and take our suggestions, you know, or what have you, it's okay. Just use the time to kind of think of your next garden, plant your seeds, order your seeds early, because a lot of people are starting gardens and become new gardeners. And so, you know, so you want to get out there early and then mark harvest dates on your calendar. So that's probably the main reminders I have. What about you, Mariah?
Those are all pretty good. Also, I guess one reminder would be to, if you have hoses connected outside, like disconnect those.
Yeah.
Don't leave them hooked up all winter, similar to the drip line. Adding an extra layer of mulch doesn't hurt.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Help insulate them a little bit. That's really all. I think this is a really good reminders list. Okay, let's see. And enjoy.
Yes. Over to the left is just some chicken teriyaki where I was enjoying some green onions. So those were pretty cool to grow, and definitely we're still growing. They're still growing now. They're really tall. Anyone want any? I have too many. And then cool flowers. So check that out, that resource. So yes, thank you for joining us. We